Hello, and welcome to the Planter Podcast, where we talk about gardening and try to make it easier for you to grow your own food. I'm one of your hosts, Peter, and I garden in Connecticut.
I'm Mylan. I garden at my home here in Atlanta, Georgia.
And I'm Erin. I'm a market gardener in Huron County, Ontario, Canada.
All right. Today we've got just a little check-in on like what we're growing here in May. We're like mid-May right now. Wow, the time just flies. I can't
Yeah.
believe it's, this year especially just seems to have been going by so fast. Um, and then at the very end, we'll have a question from the audience. So we'll answer that. And yeah, let's get started. Um, but should we start with the hottest climate or the coldest climate first?
Start with the hottest because you've actually got a lot of exciting stuff happening.
I do. So I've been in ground since, well, the spring garden officially went in ground middle of April, probably about the second week of April. So we're right at about a month in ground. And one of the most exciting things I've seen so far, my tomato plants have flowers. I
Wow.
was so stoked about that because that means I'm anywhere from 30 to 50 days from having fruit. And I don't know about y'all, but I am so looking forward to that first tomato.
It really is a turning point in the whole
Yeah,
season.
yeah. They started to, I was very fortunate. I didn't have much transplant shock. I mentioned in the last episode that we had been in a pretty severe drought, hadn't
Mhm.
had rain for close to 2 months. And maybe 2 weeks after planting, we finally got some decent rain, and not once, but we actually got some each week. And I got to tell you, the difference between the garden with your regular watering and after a good soaking rain, the plants just thrive. Like you can actually see them happier after a nice rainfall. So I've got my tomatoes going. I've got
And
peppers.
the weeds get happier too after
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
we do have that.
yeah.
I tried to stay on top of that with mulch and hand pulling beforehand, so I'm not in too bad a shape. But my peppers are going. Starting to see just the hints of the flower buds. I can't see flowers on those yet, but I'm hoping within the next 2 to 3 weeks those will start. My eggplants are coming up. Herbs have just been exploding. Like cilantro is right in that sweet spot of where it likes to grow. It's just warm enough for it to thrive, but not necessarily hot enough for it to bolt in some locations. We do have 90-degree temps coming up this week, though, so I'm
Mm.
expecting any of those that are in full sun, they're going to be toast this week.
So are
Oh,
you
shoot.
pulling the lettuce now? Is that what
Yeah,
all the things that bolt?
so the anything that's bolting, a lot of my brassicas that were
Mm.
kind of hanging around after the past like week or so, the cabbages kind of started to split, so I harvested the last of those. The carrots that I had, kind of some of them started to go to seed, so I made sure I harvested all of those to make sure that they stay nice and sweet. What else? I did direct sow some cucumbers and squash and some melons. 50% of those did well. The other 50% I did not treat for pill bugs and earwigs, and they
Mm.
chomped those down. So getting
Mm.
ready to do some more of those. And the lesson for those of you that direct sow and can seed start, even when you direct sow, go ahead and start some in some trays for backups. I didn't
Yeah.
do it. I normally do that. And this year I was just like, I'll just go ahead and put them in ground. And sure enough, they sprouted. I was really happy. And then the next day I was like, wait,
Where'd they
where'd
all
they go?
go?
Yeah.
It disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So,
so frustrating when that happens.
yep. But yeah, so I am going to treat for the earwigs and stuff like that because they just thrive in the conditions with the mulch, especially after the rain. They were not quite as bad before, when it was
Hmm.
dry, they
Yeah.
were going to areas that was a little bit more, in the woods, but after they had the rain, they came for the fresh vegetation.
Mhm.
So it's not all wins. There are some legitimate gardening fails if your garden is completely normal.
And what are you using to treat the earwigs and the pill bugs?
I use Sluggo Plus.
Okay.
The base one is just for like slugs and snails, but the plus has spinosad and I forget the other one, but it's an organic treatment. Um, and I've been doing some work with them, and it's a product I've been using for several years now. Works really, really well.
And you
So
like have one bed that was treated and the other bed wasn't, and that's how you had half of them.
no, the other beds I planted a little bit more mature transplants. There was
Ah, gotcha.
one bed where I did some direct seeding,
Yeah, they really like
and
the young
yep,
seedlings to.
they like them as soon as they're sprouted. If they're 3, 4 weeks old, like most of my transplants were, those were fine. They're as a matter of fact, in that same bed, I did some direct sowing and I did some transplants of flowers and some more tomatoes. Those are doing fine. It's just the seeds that were sprouted um, in the bed.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. So
And
I.
that's one of the advantages of transplanting and getting the plants to a nice healthy size. Like sometimes it's tempting to go, that little bit smaller, that little bit younger, but if you can get them to a nice sturdy healthy size, then they can take a little bit of that damage without like completely disappearing like you said.
Yeah, and like
mhm.
cucumbers grow so fast anyway, so it's just like probably a week or two after they sprout, and they're already probably too big to manage. You
Yeah,
have to get them outside.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I've
yeah,
tried the opposite. I've done, started as seedlings, and then um, the little critters like voles said, "Oh, these transplants look so delicious," and they just ate those
Oh
too.
no.
So
yeah. I'm fortunate. I hear a lot of people deal with the voles and the moles, and I'm really fortunate I don't have them here. Um,
Mhm.
Knockwood, hope it stays that way.
yeah, I'm hoping in my new garden I don't have that problem. So,
Yeah.
but at the community garden last year and the year before that, they were just so annoying.
Oh, that was their buffet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I can't blame them. It's a good spot to live. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Come out and pick fresh veggies daily.
Yeah, yeah.
So what else do you have growing on in your garden, Peter?
All right, so yeah, moving on north. So I'm in Connecticut, so it's like about the same climate if you're in Chicago area or, um, yeah, like Pennsylvania area. It's about the same. Um, I just planted a whole bunch of seeds. Nothing's really come up yet though. So like a few months ago I planted the carrots and those have come up, and I've transplanted my onions in. Um, and transplanted in some lettuce too that I started inside. So all that stuff I started inside, I put out. But just last week, I sowed a bunch of cucumber seeds and squash seeds, and I'm trying some pumpkin and some watermelon, which has always evaded me over the years because of the squash vine borer. But this year, I'm trying it. In my garden, I've got 10 raised beds and then a big fence along the outside, and I'm actually planting the watermelon and the pumpkin along the fence. So I'm hoping to train it so it goes out of the fence. Um, and I planted a whole bunch of it, so hopefully, like at least one of them won't get hit by the squash vine borer this year. And it's also like in regular soil, which I think will help um, keep the roots like a little bit more moisture, um, keep from drying out like you might have that problem in a raised bed. I don't know. I'm just trying like everything new this year because nothing's ever worked for me in the past. So, not in the raised bed, and then also a whole bunch of them, and then um, just in regular soil. So we'll see how that goes.
If you
Um,
want to salvage just one of them, you can cut them out pretty easily, pretty successfully. So
Okay.
it's
Yeah, I
kind of
remember
a,
you had a video about that.
yeah,
Right?
I think or at least some pictures. Yeah, no, a little short video actually. So basically, the telltale sign is all your leaves start drooping, and like
Hmm.
no matter what you water or anything, they just droop.
And at
So
that point,
within
it's not too late.
by that point, it's not too late if you catch it like within, a day or two kind of thing. So
Hmm.
they're drooping and you're like, they should have moisture. This isn't a drought thing. And it's also, if you have multiple plants, it's sometimes just the one plant that can be
Yeah.
the telltale. It's like these two plants look
Easy to
beautiful, but
compare the
this
two. Yeah.
guy suddenly just went, "Mrr." So that's how you know. So you start looking at the base. You can usually see where the entry hole is. There's like little chewed up stem bits. So
Hmm.
you can see where they went in. So you just start digging around a little bit there with a knife. And, you might have to, like, you got to be careful. You don't want to slice the stem open, but you do have to do a little bit of surgery, dig it out, kill it. And then if you want, you can rebury, the stem as well to
Yeah.
kind of help it reroot. So
And I'm
again,
think
kind
eh,
of kind of a pain, but if you're really determined to get your pumpkins, it
I'm
can
determined.
help.
And I'm also thinking like, okay, there's the other trick to wrap the stem with aluminum foil. So I'm gonna try that too once they actually sprout and get some length. Um, so yeah, okay, I'll definitely.
I'm curious if the foil works. Let me know because I might have
I've
a
heard
full
varying
tin
things
foil.
about it. They're like, okay, they just crawl underneath the foil, and so it
Mm.
probably depends on how well you wrap it. Um, but it's worth a shot.
Mhm.
And how heavy duty your foil is. Make sure you
Yeah,
go with the
yeah,
super
yeah.
aggressive foil.
So, what else am I growing? I planted the bean seeds. Um, oh, my green stalks are doing pretty well. One of them with herbs, the other one with bok choy. Um, so yeah, so things are just starting to grow. I can't plant out my tomatoes and peppers just yet because we keep getting a bunch of temperatures overnight in the 40s. So I've been bringing those in at night because anything under 50 can slow the growth of tomatoes. So,
Mhm.
um, but it looks like, according to the weather forecast, starting next week, I might be able to transplant the tomatoes and peppers into the garden, but it could be risky. So uh,
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know if I will. How about you, Aaron? Up,
As long as you can cover them,
yeah.
that's the main thing. Yeah, I mean, here it's kind of half and half. So I've been planting outside since early April, which was quite early. But everything that I planted outside, none of it kicked the bucket. So that's the good news. So we've got lots of cool season crops going out there. We've got salad turnips, radish, arugula, lettuce heads, lettuce mix, spinach, all the stuff that likes cold, basically. Um, but the downside, and we did talk about this last time, is it has been cold enough that the growth is kind of at a standstill. So I think things are about a week behind where I would expect them to be at this point. So we'll see. We have some warmer temps coming, so I'm really hoping it, speeds up a little bit. So yeah, the good news is all the cool crops are hanging in there and growing. The bad news is they need to chop and hurry up.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we can get to market. Lots of peas. I'm doing a lot of peas this year. Now they're not going to be ready, for another several weeks, but yeah, the peas are happy as anything. So as long as you're willing to get out there in the cold and maybe do a bit of covering if the temperatures get too extreme, there's a lot you can get going even when you're still getting freezing nights and things like that. So yeah, so just and multiple successions of all of those types of crops, right?
So,
Because those are the types of things in a market garden where it's like, okay,
mhm.
every week you want to have lettuce heads, every week you want to have spinach. So you just try to even out the harvest so you don't get a glut and then nothing and then a glut and then nothing.
Mhm. Now,
So
do you cover them at all? Like, because you have long 50-foot beds or rows or
mhm,
whatever you call them.
mhm.
So do you just put out a huge roll of frost blanket?
Yeah, so you can buy like at agricultural suppliers, you can buy huge, like, 100-foot plus, rolls of frost cloth, and it comes with different protection values too. Frost cloth / row cover, sometimes it's called row cover. And then you can cut it. So you can get a giant sheet and then cut it to your, garden size. And then you get these hoops. You can make your own hoops, I think, by buying some wire at a hardware store. But again, I just get it from an agricultural supply store. It's pre-cut. It's just these, thin wires, and you bend them over the whichever beds you want to cover.
Okay.
You can. So there's also the concept of floating row cover, where you can just lay cover on top of things, but that's not very good if you're trying to protect from frost and cold. You don't want the cover sitting directly on the plant. It's okay if you just want to like keep the plant that little bit warmer or keep the insects off or that kind of thing. But if you're trying to actually protect against freezing, you don't want the cloth actually sitting on the leaves and kind of
especially
holding
if it's
that.
like precipitate, if it's raining or like kind of snowing, then it's
and then it all turns into ice. So that's the main way. Right now it's kind of getting to the point, again, because it's all cool season crops, I actually switched out the row cover for insect netting now. So it's warm enough that they're not at any, and they're pretty well established too, so I'm not worried about anything dying with the temperatures that we've got. And we actually did have some hot days in April, t-shirt weather kind of thing. So I swapped it for insect netting.
Do you have insect netting over like every bed, or just the problem ones that might get hit by
mostly the problem? I mean, you could almost make the argument for every crop in some way, shape, or form, but the ones that I really know are going to be problematic, like a lot of the brass, like
I was just thinking that the cabbage moth is probably your biggest enemy.
So you got your broccolis, your cabbages, tatsoi or like bok choy, arugula, just because we like the leaves to be nice. I don't cover my radishes and turnips, even though the leaves do get some flea beetle damage, just because the leaves
don't eat the leaves as much.
You can, but it's not the star of the show. So, and there's only so much, netting to go around. So yeah, you just kind of prioritize based on what's the, what's going to get decimated and what needs to have nice looking leaves. So lots of cool stuff. On the warm front, we've got lots of things inside.
And they'll be inside for another month.
Probably couple weeks. So here this upcoming weekend is a long weekend. So that's generally kind of considered the safe planting window for where I'm at. But we've had some really unseasonably cold, like we had a few nice days in April, but then we really dipped below seasonal. So just for example, today it's a high of 48. Tonight it's a low of 30. Whereas our seasonal average is high of 64, low of 43.
Oh yeah.
So we've had a week or two of that. So it's kind of like, I don't really want to put. And last year we had a very late frost as well. So it's just one of those things where it's like, towards the end of the week, it's supposed to warm up. And if it really looks like the 10-day forecast looks amazing, then I might hustle and get them hardened and get them out. But if it's at all questionable, there's no point rushing it. You're not going to gain any time. Your plant's just going to sit there. If any, it might even die if it gets really cold, or just, not grow. So
yeah.
I timed it pretty well this year, to the point where they're not like crawling out of the trays trying to, escape. So we're okay to hold if we need to sit in the holding pattern for another couple weeks. So.
And that's where just not rushing to start seeds too early saves you in the long run. It's so tempting once we start to get that hint of spring weather, the seed catalogs start showing up, the emails come flooding in, and you're like, I want to start seeds right now. I have to. just be mindful of your location, as you can hear the differences between all three of us, and just make sure you're not following a schedule that's not suitable for your environment, because in the long run, it's just not worth it. Your plants will get set back. You'll lose crops that you've been spending 2 months babying if you rush them.
Mhm.
So take heed of our warnings on that timing.
Question for everyone. On that note, is there anything you wish you had started earlier? And two, is there anything you wish you had started later this year?
Mm.
I'll go first.
Okay. You had something in
I
mind
really
already.
wish I started my onions earlier. Um,
Oh.
they were just little dinky things by the time I was able to transplant them out. And a few years ago, I started them like December or January, and then I had to trim them multiple times. They grew so much.
Hmm.
Um, this year, not so much. So, yeah.
Hmm.
And that's another one where timing is just so interesting, because I planted my onions out back in October and November, and so I've been harvesting the past month.
Yeah.
Um,
That's because you're
via
doing
Dora.
short day onions, right?
Right, right.
Yeah.
We're doing short day onions,
Yep.
so they overwinter really well. I did use starts instead of starting from seed.
Yep.
And I've got some massive, I'm talking 1 pound sweet onions that have come out of the ground and are already curing. So again, we're just
Gosh.
going to keep saying it. Listen to the differences in timing, follow advice for
Yeah.
your specific
Es-
area. That's one
Especially
of the most
onions.
advantages. Yeah.
They're so different. Like
Yep.
I use long day onions because that's just the climate up north, and then you're down south, you get the short day
Short day.
onions. And then the
Mhm.
short days you're supposed to start in the fall. These long days in this climate you're supposed to start in the spring.
And
Don't
that's
ask me why. I don't.
that's across the allium family. So my garlic is
Mhm.
the same way. My garlic is just about to wrap up. I used soft neck garlic, which is the equivalent of short day when it comes to onions.
Okay. I plant my garlic in the fall too. Um,
Mhm.
around like November timeline. When do you plant your garlic?
Mine went in late October, November as well.
Okay.
And so I pulled one as a test um, this weekend, and it was a pretty decent size. I would like to get it a little bit bigger, but I've
Mm,
got three different types. The elephant garlic I haven't pulled, but the stalks look insane. They're like that big around. And one of the things, I'm growing garlic for the first time, and I'd been watching it, trying to figure out if I'd be able to tell, like, is it starting to bulb? And in watching the stalks, I guess you would call them, the stems of the garlic, first you see kind of that first few, like maybe five or so, but now I'm starting to see those are starting to open up, and there are spindles of those stems coming up. So that was my telltale sign that
mm,
they
mm.
are actually starting to replicate the cloves. So I'm getting anxious. I don't want to pull them yet. I'm going to wait a little bit longer, wait for those older leaves to die back more. But I'm really excited to harvest garlic. I was thrilled when I pulled onions, but when I saw that happening with the garlic, I got really excited.
It's treasure under the dirt. That's the same thing with
Hmm.
potatoes
Yeah.
and onions.
Yeah.
You never know what you're gonna get, but
And
it's
they're so
always.
fragrant.
Mm,
They're
hmm.
so fragrant.
And it's such a staple crop too. Like it's pretty easy to grow. Say if you want to be self-sufficient in garlic, it's pretty easy to grow a year's
Yep.
worth of garlic in a small space. So it's like really rewarding, to be like, oh, I've got my full garlic supply done.
And it stores so easily. So
Mhm,
you got it for the whole year.
mhm.
The hardest part for me is just being patient, like
Yeah.
just leaving it in the ground for that long. I kind of have that tendency that Peter spoke about earlier. Sometimes I have a tendency of getting tired of looking at the same crop. When you're in a small area, you're like, oh, I could be growing something else. So putting that in a bed that wasn't a high demand bed helped in this case, so that I'm not rushing to get it out of the ground.
Mhm.
But I do want to see I do want to see the harvest pretty soon. I'm excited about that.
All right, Aaron. Do you have any answers to my questions?
Yeah, I mean, I think I did a I'm gonna pat myself on the back a little bit. I did a pretty good job this year. Last year, I think I planted at least or seeded indoors at least a week or two early on my tomatoes and like my cucumbers and squashes and stuff like that.
A
Just
week or two is not too bad, yeah.
yeah.
But with this, I guess with the cucumbers and squashes, they could grow a lot in a
They
week or
grow
two.
so fast, and then with the
Yeah.
tomatoes, it's kind of like you're timing it to get it as big as possible, but not too big. And then when it goes past that threshold of too big, you're like, oh boy.
You don't want to have to like figure out how to support them inside from flopping over.
Yeah, and where to put like trying to get them all manipulated under the grow lights and hardening them. It's like, oh, now I gotta collect all these vines to take them outside. So the tomatoes, I'm super happy with. The squash, I'm just getting right now, like it's just popping up, so it's going to be perfect. Another 2 weeks or so, and good to go. The only thing, and I talked about this in a previous podcast that I'm debating on, like I'm still a little bit on the fence with, is my peppers. So I started them a week later because I wanted a little bit of offset with the tomatoes, just kind of for workload, and then B, with peppers, they need actually warm soil. So it's not just enough to not have frost. They just want it warm. And so if you're putting them in, even if it's not frosting, anywhere dangerously, if it's cool soil, cool nighttime temps, they're not going to go anywhere. So I'm like, well, why have two things going wild at the same time? I'll just, delay the peppers and anticipate planting them, more towards the tail end of May. So TBD right now, I'm looking at them going like, you're still a little small, but I also know that once they, start putting on the true leaves, like they've already put on a lot of growth at that point. So that's jury's still out on the peppers, whether I'm going to back them back up or not. But yeah.
I'm proud to say I have not killed my pepper seedlings this year like I did last year.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, the not having the grow light accidentally be on 24/7 is key. And then also I've been fertilizing them as suggested by Mylin. So
Nice.
thank you.
Looking forward to seeing what you get.
Yeah.
What about the water? We were talking about the water temperature too, and trying to let it come up to room temp.
Yes. Yeah, I did that. And I've also not been watering them as much, so they're not like bogged down with water. Like a lot of other my seedling trays, I just fill them up with water and then they bottom water, and they get pretty moist, and so I've been doing less and then refilling more with the peppers.
I feel like that's something that we're more prone to do is overwater, especially during those stages. When you're growing indoors, you'll get the algae and the mold. That's when they start to creep in because we're leavening on the plants just a little too much. Once they start to sprout, they don't need to be sopping wet and that moist all the time. A dry layer on the surface is just fine.
Yeah.
And the other thing I find with peppers too, because they are such a heat-loving crop, if you're growing them anywhere that's kind of cool, so like a basement or something that's not that nice greenhouse warm, they're not growing as quickly, and the growing media isn't drying out as quickly either. So I find the peppers are just that even a little bit more fussy about the watering, unless they're being grown in like perfect ideal greenhouse heat, super fast growth conditions. They just can't handle sitting in, a block or a pot that's a little too wet and a little too cold. That's just game over for peppers.
It's almost as if they do need the warmth, but they also like just a little bit of neglect. They want to dry out, I find, a little bit more than like what tomatoes do. Even when you're growing them, you'll notice tomatoes will start to wilt or basil will start to wilt, and you'll know for sure it's time to water. Peppers take 3 to 4 more days, even longer if you're watering on that same schedule, before you'll see even a hint of them being unhappy. So getting that balance is difficult to learn early on, but you'll get there.
All right. So we actually, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we have a question from a listener or a viewer. All right. And this is from Annabelle. And she says, "Hi there. I've been a container gardener out of a little apartment for most of my adult life, and now I have a real yard and slightly raised beds to work with. I've started thinking ahead about soil amendment. After I see how my current round of crops go, what are your biggest pieces of advice on how I can help my soil for the next season?" And as she continues, testing its composition might not be a financial reality right now, but open to it down the line if I have to. And then she provides a little bit more info. She is in a tiny Kansas town, so probably like in between, closer to your climate, Mylan. She's doing a combination of in-ground containers and some makeshift beds. My in-ground soil is a neutral pH, but a tad bit on the clayey side. Also, she says that the yard's basically crabgrass, blue violets, and dandelions. So, interested in amending using raised bed soil. Thanks for the great content, Annabelle. All right.
So it does sound like she's kind of in that transition zone,
Mm-hmm.
kind of in between the two of us. So
Yeah, I would
it's going to
say
take kind of a
split the
blend
difference.
of the two. Right, right. I think the thing that I would start off on is, especially if she might not be new to that town, but that area. But one thing that I would note is for testing the soil conditions for the used raised bed soil. She mentioned whether or not that might be financially accessible at this point. And the advice that I'd give there is just double check with your university extension offices in your area. So I did a quick look, and Kansas State University does have a department of agronomy, and they do have soil testing that starts as low as $10 for the most basic testing. And now testing prices do go up based upon how much
Mm-hmm.
analysis you really, really need for your garden. But if you're just getting started, you want to know the pH, you want to know the phosphorus and the potassium in it. That starts around $10 and it goes up incrementally from there. So if that is something that is accessible, I would start there because you might not need anything, or you
Mm-hmm.
might just need very, very little input.
And
So,
you don't want to be wasting your money on amendments that you don't need. So it might end up being worth it to pay for that $10 test.
yeah, if
Um,
that's accessible to you. And
mhm.
that process is relatively easy. What I've done for the university testing here in Georgia, we can purchase these little brown bag material envelopes. And so you go around the garden and you dig down with a trowel from multiple spots in the garden beds that you're testing. You then take that soil, put that in a bucket, mix it all up, and let it dry for 2 to 3 days or so, just because you don't want to put wet soil in the
Here's
mail.
my
So once
drippy
that,
clay sample.
yeah, yeah, your mailman won't be happy with you there. But once that dries out, you take the collected amount, and there's a fill line on the bag, and you just put whatever the designated amount into the bag and mail that out, and they will email you results, or you might be able to access a website. So it's it. I'm not saying everybody will have the financial resources to do that, but if you do, it's very, very helpful
It
to
it's
do that.
definitely worth looking into because at least where I live, there is a place that does it for free. And then there's another place if you want like more advanced soil tests. Then it's probably like $5 or $10 per sample. It's not too much. So definitely check your local extension office or whatever they call them in Canada. Um,
Yeah,
and see
it's
what's
just
good.
the agriculture schools. Now, I think the prices are a little bit steeper here. But again, still, well worth it if you have the ability. And also it's a small space. So like Mylan said, you can pretty easily combine samples and get a pretty good idea for the whole space. It's not like you have to send in, 5 or 10 different samples of different zones. So yeah, it sounds quite reasonable in that area.
But okay, so once you get your test, if let's say you don't get a test, maybe it's like too hard, or you want to plant right now and you want to amend the soil right now. Um, what steps should she take? What do you recommend for a good soil amendment?
So the way that I started, because I was in that same boat, when you're just learning, you don't know about soil testing, or I did not know. I won't say speak for everybody. I did not know about testing. How much information was out there. And so what I would suggest, if you're not ready to do that, some very gentle organic fertilizers and compost. And the reason why I say organic there is because they're just way gentler than the synthetic blends. Now, your plants don't care what the source of the feeding is. That's more what we care about. But there's more room for error if you're using the synthetic. Less room for error if you're using the synthetic. That's when you burn your plants. But unless you just went super overboard with the organic, I'm talking pounds when you're supposed to use in cups, there's far less risk for burn. You might get more green leaf growth than what you really wanted for some crops, but even then, that's very very rare. So for a fresh bed, for starting a new bed, I'd go with a general purpose organic granular at the time that you're setting up, and at the time or at the time of planting. Then, as you're growing, if you start to notice anything lagging, a liquid organic fertilizer, water soluble, that breaks down a little bit faster will help fill in those gaps. You'll hear about fish fertilizer. One that I use is AgroThrive. That's got some other beneficial nutrients in it. And so that's how I've approached it here in my garden. Now, Aaron, you're a market gardener, so you've got to be a little bit more aggressive. What's your approach?
Yeah, although I'm trying to think it like I think the focus of the question was primarily on the raised beds and the slightly raised beds, but the principles of good soil really apply all around. There's just little differences if you're doing containers versus raised beds versus in ground. So what I would say for the raised beds, so um, it sounds like they're filled already, but sometimes during the first year they sink quite a
Yeah.
bit. And I'm not sure what the starting point was for filling them, but if you were needing to top them off or filling a raised bed for the first time, you want basically a combination of, the recipes vary in terms of the ratios. And actually, I have just for a little plug, I have Gardner Scott's book here, Guide to Raised Bed Gardening. And in chapter 4, he gets into a lot of detail about different soil compositions and amendments you can use to fill raised beds. But in essence, you want, a certain ratio of basically growing medium or, mineral content. Then you want a certain ratio of compost, and then a certain ratio of other organic materials. So what I would say is if I was just kind of filling it for the first time or topping it off, I would use a mix that's specifically designed for raised beds. So you don't want garden soil. You could use a bit of your native soil in the mix, but since it's clayey and there sounds like there's a lot of weed seeds, it might be worth avoiding if you can swing it financially to just buy something from the garden center. So a raised bed mix in conjunction with compost. So, whatever compost source you have, whether it's, a bag composted, manure product. Opinions kind of vary on the municipal compost. You're not going to get a lot of nutrition through that, but it can help add some organic matter. So if that's what's available to you, that could be a certain percentage of your mix, maybe mixed in with some, animal compost. And then other organic materials. I mean, typically, those would make up like the bottom layer of your bed. So if you're talking like leaves or tree branches or stuff like that, You can certainly cover your beds at the end of the season with leaves, and those, will break down quite a bit over winter and then add to your, nutritional profile next year. But that's basically kind of the combination you want to be looking at is kind of the majority of the proportion as a raised bed mix or something similar. A good dose of compost, and then you can add some other materials as needed. And then I agree with Mylan 100%. Go with the organic amendments, whether it's pelletized chicken manure or fish emulsion, or blood meal can start to get a little aggressive, but you could follow the directions on the package, add some blood meal, some bone meal. That'll just help make sure you're not overdoing it with anything.
Yep, I agree.
And the other thing I should have mentioned is also aeration. That's a really key thing. If your soil is settling over the winter, you'll want to aerate it somehow. You can either lightly fork it. Some people get really aggressive and turn it over. Kind of, depends on your style. But you more than likely will want to do some loosening before doing any kind of top off of the soil on top.
Yeah, so in previous years, so I have a whole bunch of raised beds, and what I would do is grab a bag of that compost, like cow manure or just like regular from the city compost, um, and then yeah, till it in. So then you aerate it, you get a little bit more nutrients, and I think that's usually good enough if you don't want to do anything else. So you just want to have like one bag or one product that you're choosing. I think that's a good way to go. Uh, but if you have time and the resources, definitely try to get it tested so you know exactly what you need to add. So, yeah. All right. I think that's it. If you have a question for us, send us an email at question@planter.garden. And we'll have that email in the show notes. And it's on the screen right now if you're watching the video. So thank you. And that is all for today. Thank you very much for watching. Please be sure to like, subscribe. I am trying to find the outro music. Here we go. Here it goes. All right. Like, subscribe, share with your friends. And we'll see you next time on the Planter Podcast. Bye.
Bye, everyone.